Welcome to Ask the Accountant, the podcast that is made for you. Weekly podcast live Mondays from 8:30 a.m., released on the podcast service of your choice on Wednesdays. Your main weekly hosts, Aaron, Patrick, and Johann Gary. Got something to ask? Submit your questions below or ask during the show. Podcast loading. We are currently getting everything set up behind the scenes, so sit back, relax, and we will be with you in a few seconds. Enjoy.
Good morning, everybody, and a very, very, very warm welcome to Ask the Accountant. I got the name right this week, which is always good. Today is the 16th of January, 2023, and it's episode number 13, and we have a cracker in store for you today. With me, as always, is Johann. Johann, how has your week been? You had a good week?
Good morning. I don't know how warm it is where you are, but we've got frost and ice. So I had to go and de-ice the wife's car this morning. Benefit of me working from home is I don't have that problem.
Yeah, your commute was a little bit safer, wasn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
Bit dangerous sometimes on the landing, but as long as you get past that, you're absolutely fine.
Yeah, as long as I don't divert through the bathroom and hit the wet floor, it's all right.
Danger averted. Danger averted. Okay, well, today we have an absolute cracker, as I said, for you. A bit light on news, but we've got some kind of more conversational topics to go through. And we're going to make sure that we bring in as much of your content as possible. As always, this webinar or podcast is all about you. So do make sure that if you are around to put your little chat into the chat box and we'll shout you out. We've got a bit of a topic later down the line that might involve you guys as well. So let's, if you are out there, let's get ready to get some of your point in there. As Lucy has just come up with and saying they've got snow in Newcastle. So yeah, it looks like North has been hit by the white stuff, unfortunately. So yeah, stay safe out there, hopefully. If you do have a question, though, I'm just going to put the question link into the comments now. So if you have got a question for the show, make sure you utilize that one, and we'll run straight into our first topic. So the topic I have in mind for the first one is a bit of a look back on 2022. So there's a great little article on Accountancy Web, Reasons for Accountants to be Miserable. So I thought that'd be a great little start to the Monday morning. What more do you want than a bit of a uplift of how to be miserable in these days? But it was a really interesting article, and it was basically looking back on 2022 and kind of the problems and issues we had and everything else that we had with it. Now, we covered a little bit on it last week about MTD, and we're going to try and stay away from MTD as much as we can. I feel like sometimes it can take over a little bit, but we're definitely going to have a bit of conversation to come through with it and go from there. But if you had a look back on 2022, and what would before we go into content, what would your initial reactions be? Is it doom and gloom, or do you think we may have jumped the gun a little bit on this particular article?
I would argue otherwise. For my clients, there's certainly lots and lots of wins. Their businesses are thriving. We were, as a business, did very well. We took on a new acquisition. I would argue, from a positive point of view, there was very little in the way of legislation changes from HMRC for us to contend with. Lots of talk about what's coming in 2023, but that's next year's problem. But yeah, I can understand why there's a negative feeling, and to be fair, I think a certain amount of our industry have a tendency to just be negative and to see the darkness in things. But no, overall, I'd say 2022 was a positive year.
Good. That's what we want to hear. We want positivity on the show. I tend to agree. I think the MTD issue aside, it was just more frustration than anything else, isn't it? It's not the end of the world. It's not, well, hopefully it's not the end of the world for some practices and software vendors out there. Hopefully the vendors that are affected negatively, this can kind of pivot and keep themselves going, which is what we want. But I do think that some of the issues the accountancy industry is facing is still there and still prevalent, and probably got worse during 2022. The main one being the recruitment issue at the moment and not being able to recruit fully I do feel like that's going to be something that's not going to fix overnight. But I think, people like ourselves and other avenues out there trying to find ways in which we can big up the accountancy profession a little bit is the only way we're really going to solve that long term, I think. And it's going to be down to kind of us as an industry to find it and solve it, because we aren't going to be able to rely on your AATs and your ICAWs and all those practicing. Like they're not going to be able to get those communication, get that out there. So yeah, I feel like it's a issue we're all facing, but I think we've all got to find a way to be able to solve it and look outside the box as well. Maybe we've got to stop using, recruitment agencies just looking at accountants and ex-accountants. Maybe we've got to start looking outside the box and looking at other ways in which we can recruit to be able to make it. So I think apart from that, I tend to agree. I think it was an interesting year. We've had some great software enhancements. We've had ways in which we can make our practice even more efficient than we've ever had before. The acquisition rolling has just continued to go. Sage has done bits, haven't they? And we've had other great acquisitions as well. So, from a software point of view, we're in a stronger position ever and more choice than ever before as well, which we'll come on to in a future topic today. And, from like you said, there's been no major changes we've had to worry about. Yes, we came on the back of COVID and we've kind of started to come from that. But if you think about the last 2 years when COVID's just been fully, that's taken over everything, then yeah, I think it's not been too bad. This particular article, though, was going on about MTD. It's how frustrating it was and how problematic it was, how COVID has had a negative effect. But it did have some opportunities to be cheerful, though. It was kind of bringing in the fact that, MTD it was actually a positive for some people as well. We spoke about it last week, didn't we, about the naysayers and everything else. I think we learned a lot this year about how the budget has to be, we've got to be very, very respectful of the budget going forward, haven't we? I think that was evident, wasn't it, of how if we don't get that right, then we've got to be on top of it. I suppose that thinking about that probably was the only major negative we had there of last year was the debacle of the budget and how that's affected everything. But
I think if that had happened pre-COVID, I don't think we'd have had such a big issue.
Yeah,
because I don't think people really paid attention to the budgets as much. But since COVID and the budget's announcing so much relief and having such a major impact on businesses, business owners are ultra aware. I certainly pencil in a block out time that once budgets are announced. So yeah. I know 2023 spring budget's just been announced for the 23rd of March, I want to say. Now, unfortunately, I'm in Mauritius that week, so I won't be watching that, funnily enough, by the poolside. Got better things to do. But yeah, it has had a bigger impact on businesses over the last few years than we've ever realised, and people are paying more attention to it. That is for sure.
Yeah. I suppose when you think about it as well, we've been such turmoil with kind of the way that the with the government being at the moment, it was always going to be, in hindsight, it was always going to be a rocky budget anyway, wasn't it? Because people had just gone back into power and everything that went with it, the politics side of things. So yeah, but it did kind of push on and bring it in. One of the topics that we had last week as well, how technology is helping, like the idea that, that chat GPT and everything else, what that could do for us. That was quite a nice little end to the year, wasn't it? And seeing that sort of elements coming in. And again, from a software point of view, I think we had a really strong year. So yeah, I get why you can look back at it and see how much of a 2022 wasn't the best year in totality. But yeah, I think we got through it, and there was some positives to take away from it. It'd be great to see if anyone's got any part views in the chat, if there's anything that we kind of missed from 2022, if there's anything else that we kind of should have brought out on, do let us know. All right, let's kind of let's be a bit more positive now, and let's talk about another topic that I found, which I thought was completely off basis, and it'll be interesting to hear your opinion on this one. But apparently, accounting tech vendors are placing added strain on practices and actually having a negative effect on everything they're doing. Accounting practices are increasingly feeling the strain of dealing with client tech inquiries on behalf of cloud software providers. And this particular article goes down to the fact that it's having a negative effect on us accounting practices and making our life more difficult. Now, personally, I can't. I'm completely against this particular article because I can't understand exactly where they're coming from in this one at all. But Johann, what's your opinion on this? I mean, surely there is no way that, you know, the industry moving forward, giving us more tools, giving more opportunities, giving us more ways in which we can enhance our practice. Yes, there's more to learn, and there might be some, there might be some added costs here and there, but surely, like, overall, this is a good thing for the industry, or am I completely missing something?
No, I completely agree with you, Aaron. I think for these little phone calls that we're getting and inquiries, and can you just show me how to do this on here? I think we are forgetting the overall positive impact on efficiency that the softwares are delivering behind the scenes, and we forget because that's not as tangible. We don't put a value on it. Well, we do in the first few months, and then after that, we would we tend to forget the value. Things like Dex, for example. We use Dex for our receipt capture and auto publishing. They've got some fantastic key metrics that constantly remind you the value that their product is delivering to your firm. And maybe that's where softwares are missing out, that they aren't reminding you of the time they're saving, or they aren't reminding you of the efficiency they're making. So yeah, I would strongly disagree with this article. And also, if you're aware of it, tech support is getting better from the providers. So when we onboard a new client, we send them an email which has got a link to QuickBooks training, pre-recorded training. The client does that, and then they book onto a call with a QuickBooks expert to go through more general stuff.
Yeah.
At which point they finally come to us to do some more business-specific things to their business. By which point they've been shown how to get around and navigate QuickBooks. They've been shown and helped to add their logo and connect a bank and stuff like that. Well, that's all time saving for us. But I know how underutilized that service is from QuickBooks. So is it that a technology is causing us more headaches, or is it that we just don't know the offering and support? I could spend 20 minutes every time I sign up a new client teaching them how to use Dext. Actually, what we do is we send them a link to Dext videos that Dext have created that are client focused to help them understand how to install and use the app. Like, if you look at the resources that are readily available, then you don't need to worry about it. Like Tony Walker is in the comments, from Armalytics. When you sign up to Armalytics, they give you a template of an email you want to send to your clients when you request the bank statements. And in that is a pre-recorded video with screenshots and stuff showing your client through the experience that they're going to go through. So if the tech companies are doing stuff like that, I'm not saying they all are, but it is something we look for when we're looking at new tech, is what support's in place by the tech companies. Our friends at Hammock, they will do onboarding sessions with your clients. So yeah, I think we've got lots and lots of opportunities to use the resources that are out there. I think far too few accountants and bookkeepers look at those opportunities and use them.
I completely agree. And it's this whole issue, isn't it? Like, as an accounting profession, we're kicking and screaming about this whole idea that we shouldn't, we should mark ourselves as business advisors as opposed to accountants, and we want to stay relevant. And there's this argument that keeps coming up time and time again. But for me, like, this whole tech stack and this whole opportunity to have a conversation about, being involved with what tech works and what doesn't is part of that business advisory part. You mentioned yourself about Dex. Like, that can completely change the way that a client perceives what their bookkeeping is going to be. When you look at Zettle versus Square or SumUp or whatever those solutions you're comfortable with being able to just showcase quickly to a client, that can make a huge difference to them. Maybe you're going to save them some money, but more so, you're going to be saving them a lot of time and a lot of issue, and maybe solving a problem that they had. I know you had a conversation with Cresco this month or this week about how you can hopefully implement a solution for your client to save them money, to make them more efficient, and ultimately make them so that they've got an opportunity to grow their business. If we're providing that level of support to them, yes, we can't solve every single problem for them, but if we're providing them solutions and solving them problems, then we as the accountant becomes more sticky, and we get a better relationship, and we help them, and obviously not obviously, but ultimately we get better job satisfaction, because that's where it becomes exciting, doesn't it, when you can help the client out.
Yeah, and a lot of people always say to you, "Oh, how do you know all this stuff? Where do you go and learn all this stuff?" It's like, well, YouTube for a starter. Like, there's so much content on YouTube, but also this is why you and I go to conferences. This is why we network with these software providers, and we constantly talk to them at conferences, either at the stand or over a pint in the pub, because this is how we learn what their softwares can and can't do, and what resources are and aren't there. Because the software providers kind of make these resources, and they seem to forget about them sometimes, and I think they forget the importance of those resources. And it's only when you're having a natural conversation that they go, "Oh, well, actually, we've got a video that can help you do that." Is that cool? Let's get that video. Let's sort this out. So yeah, it's what you make of the situation, I think. And a lot of accountants and bookkeepers are not willing to invest their time and resources into going to conferences, researching softwares. And they're probably the ones that are the force behind articles like this, that are saying tech solutions are more of a headache than they are a solution.
Yeah. And this whole idea that we've become more of a salesperson just doesn't hold true. Yes, we're trying to push innovation to clients, and yes, we're trying to make their life easier, but ultimately we're doing it because it's to improve the client in one way or another. We're problem solving with sorts and solutions. I do agree on one part of the article that says about tech savvy talent getting snapped up. That will be an issue. Like, you are going to have people in the industry who are ultimately going to be comfortable with talking about these sort of solutions, and there's going to be people who aren't comfortable with it. But realistically, all we've got to do is just improve our training for them, like internally for our staff members, find ways to encourage them. I know, looking behind the scenes a little bit in terms of QuickBooks and what their training platform is going forward, and how, Core and Advanced has been so well received, and how that is. But what's next for that? Like, what else can QuickBooks train and help with? And that's where ultimately we'll get more people involved in some of these solutions. Just even something like QuickBooks, you may be able to file a VAT return, but there's so much more that's in there, and that's where you can really start to see benefits for your clients and be able to bring in opportunities and add other aspects to the app system. And okay, probably worst example is QuickBooks, because they're struggling a little bit to help other solutions like get involved. But ultimately that's where it's going to come from. It's this ecosystem idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
And when people kind of ask me, like, where do I get ideas from, and where do I get these solutions from and stuff, majority of the time it's because I found a solution because it's connected with something I'm already using. Like, as soon as I set up a new piece of solution, the first thing I'd always look at is their integrations page, because ultimately for me, that's something that is important. Like, if it's a solution that will happily talk to other solutions I've already got, then straight away that's something that I will always push for, and always have an opportunity to have a bit more of a time available to learn it inside out and understand it more, than if it's in its own little ecosystem. It's trying just to stay by itself and not talk to the rest of the world. And a great example of that is always going to be when clients ask me what EPOS solution, or what solution should they use? Is it Square? Is it Zettle? Is it SumUp? Well, I always tend to jump on the Zettle or Square before I go to SumUp, because SumUp is just sat in its own little ecosystem and it doesn't want to talk to the rest of them. Whereas because the other two are more open and they have the opportunity to connect more solutions to them, then suddenly we can have much more opportunity there. And I think that's how I have always kind of adapted my way of being able to get involved in all these pieces of software, because it's integration first, and then from there you can start seeing where the benefits come from. So yeah, I get the tech savvy talent getting snapped up argument. I can see that bit, but I think that's just something, again, we need to broaden our horizons into who we are going to recruit into the accounting world going forward. Is it just going to be accountants, or do we need to start thinking about people who are more tech first, and maybe do we need some sort of like IT-esque team going forward as part of your business strategy? That's something that I think we need to start looking more and more into, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, there's always going to be challenges, but I still strongly believe that the tech is bringing more good than it's taking away. Like, people are saying that, oh, accountants are leaving the industry to go and work for software companies, and they are. I've seen it. That's where our acquisition last August came from. Was that person wanted to sell up and go, and didn't want the hassles of having a firm anymore. They wanted to go and work for a software company in the industry, and that's fine. But it's still a minority. It's still a very small amount of people that are doing it, and having voices and champions in those software companies with a background in the industry is so important that I don't see it as a negative, because it's those voices that software companies will listen to and build and follow new features from and stuff. So yeah, everything you do will have ups and downs and positives and negatives. And yeah, I think this article just frames the negatives, ignoring all the benefits that it brings with it.
Yeah, 100%. And that whole point about people from the industry going in and training, or going into more of a tech role, the best thing about that is that they're going in there knowing what the problems are. One of the criticisms we've had with certain vendors in certain times is the fact that they will create this new feature, and the new feature may sound great and everything else, but they're creating it in their bubble of, oh, we think this is going to be a problem, we think that this needs to be solved. When if they just spent that time, properly talking to accountants, they would have probably seen that actually that's not quite the pain point we've got. Our pain point is here. So if we can have more people going into the industry and kind of bringing their pain points in, then yeah, it's going to be beneficial to all, isn't it? So, which is things like where Hammock came from, isn't it? Like there was a pain point there, a massive pain point for accountants, being able to deal with their rental properties, and what software do they suggest for rental clients going forward. And then Hammock were like, well, that's a pain point, let's build a solution around it. And if we get more and more and more of that, then that's where we're going to get some great software solutions. And ultimately it makes it easier for us, because if that, the cream will always rise, and then we can have that tech stack that goes, right, well, that's best in class, that's best in class, that's best in class. Let's start doing it. Let's start implementing them. Then we become less of a salesy, pusher and everything else. We're becoming more of a, right, here's your problem that you have, Mr. Client, and here is a load of solutions that can benefit you. And I think that ultimately is going to be the best way forward, isn't it?
Definitely.
Awesome. All right, well, I feel like we put that to bed, and we've made sure that that's not going to go forward. So what about some horror stories? So this one, I'd love to get some of the chat involved if we can. But we're in the middle of a pretty busy season, aren't we? There's some sort of deadline coming up by the end of this month, I've heard, and something that we've got to keep on top of.
Yeah, I mean, it's been very interesting on my favorite platform of LinkedIn. Quite a few people realizing that there seems to be a tribe of accountants and bookkeepers that are refusing to take on work. We've picked up 5 self-assessment tax returns in the last week from people that have gone to accountants that said, oh no, we don't take on new self-assessments past November. or they're charging 4 times the price that they'd normally charge because it's now in January. And it's like, yeah, that's fine. If that's how you want to run your business, that's absolutely fine. But is that the right thing by the client? In my opinion, no. So, there's a few posts on LinkedIn at the moment where people are saying, look, we're still taking self-assessments. It doesn't mean we're last minute. It doesn't mean we're unorganized. It just means our doors are open and we're here to support clients. We're still taking on self-assessments. My team aren't working weekends. They're not working nights. We are on top of things. We've got a smooth system. We've got a smooth process, which means we're able to take on those last-minute tax returns, which means we're supporting clients and new clients. And by doing that, we've already picked up 2 long-term monthly clients out of being that open, supportive practice, which other firms have said, oh, you want a self-assessment tax return? No, thank you. And they've not realized what they've actually missed out on isn't just a self-assessment tax return. They've missed out on a reoccurring monthly client that has potential to bring quite a lot of value to them. But yeah, so we are in what is the busiest month of the year, I suppose. I don't know about you, but most VAT returns have a filing deadline of 7th of January, I find. And then put on top of that the self-assessment deadline. Yeah, there are days when you go, Christ, when does it end? But that is the industry. It's like going into hospitality and complaining Christmas is busy. Every industry has its peak time. If you're in the travel and tourism industry and you complain it's busy in the summer, well, perhaps it's not the industry for you. If you're in hospitality and you complain it's busy at Christmas, then it's not the industry for you. Like, we all have peaks and troughs, and we just have to accept this is our peak and do what we can to help reduce the stress on our teams.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And it goes back to this whole software issue, doesn't it? It's like, we can have particular software solutions that can make it easier, and we can have particular software solutions that are just going to make it more difficult for you, or lack of software just means that you're never going to be able to have efficiencies in place to be able to deal with it. So yeah, I mean, we spoke about it a lot last week, so I don't want to kind of go over the same topics again and again, but it is a lot of times where you do think about like why there's so much negativity around it. Like when you were saying about LinkedIn, and you were talking about how there's a lot of topics coming up on everything else, where people are being so negative about other people taking on work, and like it's almost like a taboo, or they're trying to sit there and say that well, you shouldn't have problems in January. It's down to you. You've got to train your clients, and as we were talking about last week, and all that sort of stuff doesn't there's never going to be a solution that means that we're never going to have these busy periods. Even if we do get our dream and MTD gets moved and the filing deadlines change and we get that September period that we have to file because we got a December year end or whatever it's going to be, going forward, all we're doing is we're pushing that back. MTD will not solve these issues for us. We're still going to have deadlines and problems to go through, but it is definitely going to be something that we're going to need to have to think about and be able to find solutions for always at all points. Like clients, sometimes for them, best thing they can ever do is just bury their head in the sand. Now maybe that's not the right client for you, and maybe they're the sort of clients you want to kind of stay away from, but if they do choose to bury their head in the sand, then all you can do is support them until they decide to bring their head up, isn't it? Like there's nothing else we can do as a profession. So yeah, I do. We're kind of in the same boat as you. It is a lot busier and there is a lot more work to do at this point, but it's not to a point where we're struggling, and we are still taking on work and we're getting some really good clients out of it, because ultimately the clients we're being passed to at this moment are recommendations. It's wow, how clients are passing work over to us because they know that we'll get the work done for them because we've already shown that we can do it for them. So if the other thing to do if you're not taking on new clients is sometimes you can harm your relationships with your current clients if they have gone and put their neck on the line to recommend you, and then you turn around to them and say, nope, can't do that work for you, then it's damaging their reputation as well.
Yeah.
The reason I brought this up though was we had some great horror stories that started flooding through. There's some examples here of how a client or an accounting firm here who has 700 odd clients, and they were left with 400 tax returns to finalize in January. Now, them sort of numbers is very scary, isn't it? And they're the sort of ones where you think to yourself, that's yeah. And if I think back to my earlier part of my career, that's exactly what it was like. It was, you came into January and just had to work every hour that it was just to try and get it over the line. But I do think those sort of days, though, are less and less likely or less and less prevalent these days, because we do have technology to help us. And this is an example of where, having that opportunity to understand the software a bit more gives us a chance to be a bit more efficient in the way that we do things. Like, gone are the days where we're waiting on every aspect of it from a client. A lot of our clients now, yes, we may be still waiting on little bits here and there, but we've done the majority of the work. We're just waiting for them to pass us whatever it is that we're still, a bit of rental income or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah.
And then the idea then for us is to take that learning, and that mean next year, well, how do we improve that? That's a pain point. What software or what solution or what system can we put into place to be able to make sure that's not a problem next year? And I think that's what ultimately we, as a profession, we've got to do more and more of, isn't it? Be a bit more proactive and find these pain points and try and find out. And when we're at these conferences, that's what we want to be talking about. That's what we want to listen to. When we're doing shows like this, if you have got those sort of issues and problems, stick them in the question box. Like, maybe we don't know the answer straight away, but we've got enough people in the industry that we could reach out to try and find an answer. And I think that's ultimately where we need to come from. Another one here is I really like this one about how a client delivered their final accounts in a black bin bag on just a few days before the deadline, and because it was a butcher, it was full of dried blood and other parts of the paperwork. So yeah, they're the sort of things that you kind of remember back to the earlier days of how it was. That's one of the advantages of using QuickBooks or Xero, isn't it?
Or Dext,
or Dext, yeah.
If they've got, I had a farmer who delivered a pile of paperwork once. It's like, is that mud or is that something nastier on that bit of paper? I don't want to know. You know what, mate? Here's Dext. As you get the invoices, just take pictures, because I don't want to handle all that in future.
Do you think that's the real reason we're going digital? It's like HMRC are sick and tired of having to send people off to decide if it's mud or not when they're looking through software, through client records.
Exactly.
So yeah.
There's always going to be, no matter what tech we put in place, we're always going to have these horror stories. And my client tried to claim X, Y, and Z from Ann Summers or whatever else it is that they're trying to claim. But that's never going to go away, regardless of what we do or don't do. That's just clients trying their luck. Or Dave down the pub has advised them, well, he can do that, so they should be able to do that. But yeah, those horror stories are never going to go away. The ones where they turn up with bin bags and stuff, yes, there is some client training to be done there, providing you've got the right systems and processes in place in your practice.
Yeah.
We've still got lots of clients who keep a very basic spreadsheet and they've got barely any transactions a year. So it's like, you know what? That's fine. We can handle the basic spreadsheet. It takes us probably as long to handle that basic spreadsheet as it would to plug our tax filing software into QuickBooks and pull off the data for an API. It's not the end of the world. It's just making sure the solution you're using on a client by client basis is the most efficient solution that for that client and most tolerable solution for that client. Like, there is no point in me trying to teach Mrs. Smith, who is 70, how to scan her P60s for her pensions and email them over to me or put them into the client portal. That is just, it's not going to happen. Let's be realistic. I'm going to pop round and knock on Mrs. Smith's doors and just pick those P60s up when I next go by. Like, it's fine. Yes, it's not the dream solution where everyone just go upload stuff into client portals, we go in and we pull that information off. But we have to be realistic about what we can achieve on a client by client basis. And if the majority of clients are doing the dream solution, then when you get the one or two minority clients that it's just not feasible for, you don't mind.
Yeah.
Now, if I go around every client and pick up their paperwork from their front doors and have a chat about the grandkids and the family and stuff, then yes, I would run out of time. But that is a minority. So it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. And it's those things as well, isn't it? Like, you know, when you're looking at those sort of people who won't change and they don't have any need to change, and you know, you're happy to kind of just do it on those. But the thing you'll gain from that is the fact that they will have other, you know, issues and problems that you'll probably be able to find. And the only way you're going to do that is by having those conversations with them and talking to them. And, you know, there is always going to be a place for the accountants industry to still be a little bit more hands-on. And that's, again, it comes down to relevance for us. Like, if, you know, they could normally have been able to just complete their own tax return with no problem, but suddenly they need help just digitalizing it, then that's a solution we can build and help and bring it in. And I think that's where, going forward, where we're going to have another opportunity to stay relevant and not have to worry too much about, you know, is the accountancy industry, MTD, going to make it so much simpler for clients that they'll never need us, and it's just one click and they've submitted their tax return and everything's happening? Well, that's great, and we can encourage that for certain clients. But there are always going to be people who that idea of just pressing a button and even going into software scares them. So that's where we can ultimately help them and bring in solutions for them and build it. And, you know, I'm excited about those sort of challenges and working with clients and finding solutions. You know, is it a case, like you said, of knocking on the door and going from there, or can we encourage them to send them in by post to us, or whatever the solution is going to be, and work with them? And I think that's where ultimately I think it's going to be exciting. And, you know, we're always going to have a deadline, we're always going to have this busy season, but I think, you know, the more we can figure out solutions and figure out bits, I think we're gonna end up having, you know, a better opportunity, I think, going forward, in terms of being able to make it a little less of a, you know, the horror stories that we've just gone through. So yeah, bring it on.
Yeah,
wonderful. All right, and if you guys have any horror stories you want to share, then please do put them in, and we'll include them in next week's episode. So the other story I want to bring up is that there's been quite a nice little element on Accounting Web. This software has had a bit of limelight. It's a piece of software called Client Engager. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, Johann. I don't know if there's anything that's brought in, but no, jokes aside. So I heard that you've the software that you're heavily involved in, Client Engager, got a bit of a limelight, and I thought it'd be good to kind of listen behind the scenes. Like, how did that come about? What was it like kind of talking about it? What's the response been? And for anyone who don't know, just give a bit of a breakdown what Client Engager can't do.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. So Client Engager is a practice management tool. It was the brainchild of Andy Wainwright over at Wainwright's Accountants in Liverpool. Basically, it does what most other practice management softwares do. We're just trying to prove that it can be developed quickly but properly. Mm-hmm. B, it doesn't have to be priced per user, so the whole team should be involved in it. One of the most detrimental things I see is a practice management tool gets brought in, and because it's 30, 40 quid a month per user, the owners of the accounting firm go, well, where do we see the value? Who does and doesn't need access to it? Well, the answer is the whole team needs access to this, how you're running your practice management software.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's get rid of that cost inhibitor. So we price by the amount of clients you've got. And it's not like £1 a client or anything. It is a 0 to 50, 50 to 100, etc. with a new pricing model actually coming out in the coming weeks with our new website. But yeah, we launched our e-signing feature last week publicly, but I've been doing a few videos and how-tos and I've done 2 quite long videos about all the latest features that we've got in Client Engager, because we are releasing updates pretty much fortnightly at the moment with quite considerable changes to the user interface, the user experience, and also new features coming out, just to try and respond to the feedback we're getting from our clients.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been doing videos. We've been putting them onto YouTube to build a library of how-to videos, but also we've been putting them on LinkedIn. And a few of those videos got watched by Tom Herbert over at Accounting Web, and he reached out and asked if we'd do a bit of an article for him about the latest bit of tech. And yeah, so that was how that happened. And one of his big questions was, why do we need another practice management tool? Have we not got enough? And it's like, well, we have, but when you look at the market, there's no small players in the market anymore.
No, not at all.
Which means there's no dynamic adjustments. There's no new ideas necessarily coming into that space. Accountancy Manager have done a fantastic job. They're now owned by Bright, and their responsiveness to changes and new features and stuff, normally when you go into a bigger company, is restricted because there's resource limitations, etc. Iris haven't really done anything new in a few years, and are changing a few things with how their systems work. So that the space for small startup practice management softwares was pretty wide open. So we've gone in and we seem to be getting a good response from it. Lots of people are really enjoying what we're doing. And we're onboarding and doing demos at quite a rapid pace at the moment, thanks in part to that article.
It's great to see. It's great to see. And I think as well, like them saying about if there's space in the industry, well, there's always going to be space for someone who's going to come in and actually bring new ideas and innovate the place and innovate it. Like, what I have been really impressed with Client Engager with is how quick you've been able to turn things around and bring new features and everything else. That there's so many times when you hear about, or you look at a roadmap of a software provider, and the roadmap is, 2 years down the line, you're going to see this nice shiny thing, and that's great. And it's always good to kind of have that opportunity. And you will always have times where you're going to have to prioritize one feature over another. But if that feature is going to be so game break or game changing in the way that you're going to be able to grow your business or anything else, and you kind of sometimes I've been been thinking this before, where I've been hanging my hat on that particular feature, and I've stuck with that software, and I've stayed with that software, and it that feature either has never materialized, or when it has materialized wasn't what it was said, or the fact that you've been able to kind of think, this is a game changing solution that we need, let's get it out there and let's develop it and let's bring it out. I think that says a lot about where and how dynamic Client Engager can be going forward. I think that's fresh and that's new, and that's something that gives you that opportunity as well when you're talking to other vendors, because then you're going to see what their challenges they're going to have, because you've firsthand seen how it is to what the problems are about developing software. And it also means that going forward, you'll be able to take that and go, right, okay, it's taken X amount to develop this feature. We've heard that this particular game-changing feature is going to take Y, and then you're going to have that opportunity to be able to develop it quicker and sooner. And that's what I'm really impressed with. I know it's still in its infancy, isn't it, the solution itself? But even now, it's a solution that you can take off, and it's going to solve a lot of headaches for a lot of small practices and medium practices out there.
Yeah, and we don't plan on doing it all ourselves. So like AML, for example, there is no point in us trying to partner up with Verify and build out our own AML system and bring in the expertise of an AML person to sort that out. What's the point when we can just partner up with Zama?
Yeah.
What's the point of building all the bank statement information that we need and that tool when we can just partner up with Armalytics?
Yeah.
What's the point of trying to build our own general ledger to raise invoices and stuff when we can partner up with QuickBooks and Xero? What's the point in building payment platforms when we could just partner up with Cresco?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, we are very open to APIs with anyone that's interested in talking to our audience. But we do have a very dynamic roadmap, and we don't care how many clients or users you've got. Like, we do, obviously, but just because you've got 10 more users and 500 more clients than everyone else in the software doesn't mean your development's got priority, because it might only impact on your business. What we're looking for on our roadmap and prioritizing is what's impacting on the larger amount of businesses. So our next big integrations will be in February. We're doing email integration because that impacts on a large number of people. Whereas we got a request the other day for the ability to tailor tasks and workflows per client. It's like that will impact on a few, but not everyone. So that will happen, but it's probably not going to happen until March, because we've got other things that impact on a wider audience first. So yeah, we're very open with how we plan our roadmap, and it's very adaptable. Like, that idea for customized workflows per client, that came in last week. It was discussed internally last week, and it was allocated its place on the roadmap last week for March, because it doesn't just go onto a list and wait. As the ideas come in, we are reshuffling our roadmap appropriately. Because some things will take 4 weeks to build, such as an email integration. Other things will take a week. Some things might take a day or two. We've got a fantastic programmer who can program stuff quicker than I've ever seen programmers manage to handle. So yeah, it does help.
Definitely. And I think as well, like, again, back to the argument of, is there room in the space for it? Well, when you think about what you're up against and what your competitors are, they very much got their own ecosystem now, like Satanta at Iris, or whatever it's called, Iris Elements, whatever it's going to be. That works really well if you're in the Iris ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
The other solutions out there are very, very good if you are prepared to be in that ecosystem. And again, the bit that you guys have got different is that agnostic approach, and it means that you can kind of partner and have any solutions you need. And I think that's refreshing as well, because going forward, I think more and more accountancy firms out there are going to need to have that opportunity to be able to add anything they need to, and have that ability to be a little bit unique and work with whatever software solutions work for them, and not necessarily being kind of forced down a route just because that's the ecosystem that their practice management solution's gone for. So I think that's gonna benefit you guys as well. So it'd be interesting, and hopefully more articles like this from a county manager going forward. And yeah, as new features come on, it'll be exciting to see.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a very enjoyable journey to be part of.
Yeah. And for you, it must be exciting to go peek behind the curtains and see the other end of it and stuff, and and see what
it is. It's really enjoyable, but then it's also extraordinarily frustrating. Like, I've been around the houses with practice management softwares for the last 5 years.
Yeah,
and I know how slow their development teams are to respond and to do anything. So, like, when we first spoke about a pricing calculator tool, from first concept to delivery of the beta was like 6 weeks. Like, others, it would have taken months and years. I'm just sat there going, if this guy can do this so easily, why are the others taking so long about it? Like, I always told it takes forever to develop things. It's like, well, does it actually, or is it just the ethos, the culture, the processes, etc., in your organization that slow it down? So yeah, extremely exciting, but when you then look back, it gets a bit frustrating.
Yeah, no, I get it. Awesome. Okay, so we had one question come in as well, so we'll cover that question. It was live as well, so if you do have questions, then do make sure that you use the comment section to interact with us and get questions over. But if you are listening to this back live, or not live, should I say, then do make sure you use the link that we've made sure is available and get a question on. We've got a couple of questions that we'll save for the next episode. But this question that came in live says, do you recommend having an accountant from day one for a brand new e-commerce business, or learn, do it yourself and start until you start making profits? Do you want to have a first shot on that one, Johann?
I think the misconception is by having an accountant from day one, it's going to cost you money from day one. There's absolutely nothing wrong with, and I do this all the time, starting those initial conversations from before day one. Go to an accountant and say, look, I've heard great things about you as an accountant. I want to work with you, and this is what I'm doing. I'm setting up an e-commerce business. What should I be considering for my ecosystem to make this easier for me and for you as an accountant? So if someone came to me wanting to set up an e-commerce business, I'd go, right, what platform are you looking to use as your e-commerce? How can that then link into QuickBooks? What software are you using to get the data for your billing, for your expenses and stuff into QuickBooks? So that we can talk about that ecosystem from day one, if not before day one.
Yeah.
And those conversations, the majority of accountants and bookkeepers would not charge for now. Though that's that initial consideration where you're having a conversation just to set things up, knowing that actually that client wants set up, he's going to come back or she's going to come back and ask you more questions. And, from day one, we might not be selling bookkeeping services, but we've sold them a QuickBooks license. We've given them a DEX license. Like, there's some kind of benefit there, but ultimately it's an investment in goodwill, and that will pay dividends in the long run. So, I would encourage you to speak to someone from day one, if not before, when you've got the first ideas and you're getting to the point where you're getting ready to start implementing things. Talk to an accountant to work out how to save yourself time and energy in the long run with your e-commerce systems, because it's a lot harder to look back and go, oh, well, if we need to do all of this and change all that and back into all data. Let's do it from day one.
Yeah.
And then you can get back in touch when things start to pick up, and we can go from there. Like, we offer bookkeeping support rather than doing the bookkeeping for you. We'll teach you to do the day-to-day data entry, and then we'll check it each month for you. We'll teach you to correct it if it's gone wrong. And then as you get busier, we'll take over the bookkeeping for you. It's all about making it scalable and affordable at the same time.
I think my part that I'd add to that is just the other thing is making sure you speak to the right accountant for it, because there are accountants out there who are brilliant at CIS and wonderful at R&D and amazing at these ones, but you've got to find the right accountant that's right for you and your business. E-commerce for me is one of those ones where, like yourself, it's been an explosion of clients that have come through, and majority of the reason they've come through is because they are having those pain points, like, as they're talking about here, learn and do it yourself and start until you start making profits. Well, learn what and learn when you don't know where to start from, and that starting point is so important. The ecosystem is, as Johann pointed out there, is just so important going forward in terms of being able to build your business and be able to get that business to the next level. Because if you're spending days and days and hours of your day just going through doing your bookkeeping, then that might not be the most efficient way to grow your business. Whereas if you had the right ecosystem in place and it was automated for you, well, then you don't need to worry about that. So I think really, finding the right accountant is going to be crucial for you. And then just finding the right accountant that will help you just make sure your compliance bit is sorted. At the end of the day, you don't need to have too much concerns at the beginning about, the costs and everything involved. What you want to be making sure is that you have the compliance is understanding, what and when you're going to have to get everything submitted to HMRC or Companies House. And then you can work backwards. And I think definitely from our point of view, like that's where we're changing the conversation with clients. It's not just about, oh, you're going to need our help and it's going to cost you this much. It's, well, actually, let's work backwards. What do you need to, and when do you need compliance to be done for? Where can we help you? If it's a light touch, great. If it's a, if you want to hand us all your work, that's fine as well. But, we're not going to pressure into either way of those particular solutions. We just ultimately want to make sure you know what your compliance is, and we can work backwards from there. And I think that's a different conversation than what the accountants industry used to be, where it was, well, if you're going to start a business, you're going to need an accountant, and it's going to cost you this. And now it's more of a, like, let's work with clients, because you may be the best bookkeeper in the world. You never used it yet. You never had a go at that software yet. Until you've kind of had a little maybe go and been pushed in the right direction and understand yourself, then you're good. But again, just please do find the right accountant. There's a lot of horror stories we've had lately are people who haven't quite taken that time to find the right accountant. They've jumped on board, and ultimately they've now got themselves into a mess because their data has just not been connected properly, or they've not used the right solutions, and they're now going to end up spending more money now asking an accountant to fix their problems than they would have done at the first point, just to be pointing in the right direction. So yeah, I think that's ultimately the best advice we can give, isn't it? It's just do your due diligence on the accountant as well.
Yeah, definitely. Finding someone that understands e-commerce or whatever network industry you're in, that I've met some amazing accountants who are just do agriculture, for example.
Exactly. Yeah.
I wouldn't even try and dream of getting into that industry. It's just absolute minefield of different things but then they wouldn't dream of trying to deal with e-commerce either. So it's finding that accountant that A, has the industry experience that you're looking for, that your industry you're in, and B, that's got that open approach, that was willing to talk to you about your ecosystem and the processes and planning for the future without charging you huge amounts of money for that conversation to happen.
Exactly. Brilliant. Well, we hope that's answered your question. Remember, if you do have any questions, then the best thing to do is use that question box. We can then make sure that we can answer it live on air for you next week. So I'm just going to post it into the chat now. So if you do have a question for us, then please do use the link. Or if you have any feedback on anything we've done, anything we talked about, then please use the feedback form as well. And with that, that is the end of today's podcast. So, Johann, if there's anything you want to plug, promote, push, is there anything that's going to happen in this week that you want to talk about in any detail?
No, I am in the office mainly this week. I've got to go and see a client after this, and then in the office, a few tax returns, a few client calls, a bit of due diligence work going on for a client, and client engager demos, I think, is my diary pretty much.
Awesome. That's what I like to hear. Pretty much the same my end. I'm actually looking forward to having a week of being in the office. I was off for a few days early last week, and I had time out in London as well for a client. So it's just be good to be back in it and get some work in. And as Andy says there, thank you for the feedback. Top show, guys. And he was very much excited about the client engager bit. So that's always good to hear. But this week I'm looking forward to having some time in the office, get some of those last bits done and dusted. And then, like you said, then we can kind of start making sure we're ready and waiting for other, because there will be some more work coming through, people who've left it to the last minute. So it'll be good to see that. We also, hopefully, fingers crossed, we've got a QuickBooks Labs episode on Wednesday. So fingers crossed we've got that going. And that'll be good to kind of see what's happening in the world of QuickBooks over in USA, and maybe even a special guest as well. We'll just tease it at that. With that, then, that is the end of today's webinar. Or why do I keep calling it webinar? This is not a webinar. This is a podcast, and it will always be a podcast. And I will get told off time and time again if I call it anything else. So with that, then, it is a great thank you from myself and from Johann. And I'm sure we'll look forward to see you next week. So it is a goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
Cheers, everyone. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Bye.